Hey, this is Neil's on Dynasty. Please like, share, and subscribe. See Neil. Be kind, helpful, and grateful because it's better than being a jerk. Both Platina and Dixie said so. And speaking of Platina, buy some silver, some platinum, and some crystallized osmium. That's sound advice, it's not financial advice. And having said that, let me get my escorts, my two female kitty kitties. Well, two of my female kitty kitties. I've got more than two. Anyhow, that's not what this is about. Let's go to what this is really about while I eat my cheeseburger. Well, actually, I'm going to have to hold off on the cheeseburger.
African countries are struggling to pay their debt and even borrowing more from the West, the member countries of AES are paying off their debts. This is astonishing given the fact that these countries are usually regarded by the rest of the world as the poorest countries in Africa. Not to mention the fact that as a result of their military government, these countries have been isolated by the West. And they are also battling with insecurity on every front. Recently, for example, Burkina Faso revealed that it has paid about 3,000 billion CFA franc, which is approximately $4.79 billion of its national domestic debt. Mali also recently paid 332 million of its internal debt. The question is, how are they doing this? Why can't other African countries do the same? Let's find out. The AES member countries have recently proven that they can survive without Western aid. You see, after the coup occurred in all these countries, there were concerns raised by some Western institutions that Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso will not be able to survive economically and financially. This is because, before the coups, these countries mostly depended on financial aid from Western countries and institutions to run their countries. In fact, according to reports, financial aid constituted more than 50% of the national budget. This meant that all the government expenses and projects depended on financial aid from the West. However, after the coup occurred, the West suspended all the aid. The US, for instance, suspended the annual $500 million it usually gave to Niger. The European Union suspended all financial commitments to Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. And they did this to pressure the military leaders to step down. The general idea was that without the aid, the military government would struggle to run the country economically and therefore they would be forced to step down. But shockingly, these countries have been surviving. Not only have they engaged in several development projects, these countries also have more than enough to pay their debts. This is remarkable. Burkina Faso, for instance, recently revealed that it has been able to pay $4.79 billion of its domestic debt since the start of 2024. This announcement was made by the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso, Dr. Apollinaire Kayalem de Tambela, during the 21st National Government Private Sector meeting held in Bobo Dioulasso on November 22nd to 23rd, 2024. This is a significant step towards Burkina Faso's pursuit of financial independence and economic stability. Speaking at the meeting, the Prime Minister emphasized that the repayment was not just a financial milestone, but a deliberate strategy to boost national economic activity and support local businesses. He also noted that the repayment demonstrates the government's commitment to economic sovereignty by prioritizing domestic obligations over dependence on external creditors. He further noted that efforts are currently underway to mobilize resources to settle the remaining debt. This is remarkable. As of June 2024, the Burkinabe domestic debt had risen to 4.195 billion CFA franc from 3.979 billion in December 2023. This reflects a 5.4% increase in domestic debts, which currently accounts for 57% of the country's total public debt at 7.354 billion CFA franc. These figures highlight the heavy burden on the country's finances compounded by the ongoing security crisis. This crisis has forced the government to turn to the financial market to fund its public investment programs. However, despite this, Burkina Faso has been able to successfully mobilize funds from the regional market. Before we proceed, here is a reminder to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel.
By the way, I haven't watched this video yet, but I'm pretty sure they're doing business with Russia, so there's no big change in anything that's happened there. It's just we're not keeping record of the transactions because Russia's doing the transactions with them and giving them, not giving them this money, but buying stuff from them, which allows them, since they no longer let foreign governments take their profit margin, they're having a larger share of their profit margin. They can actually pay off their own debts. So I'm sure Russia's got a big part to do with this, and good on them. But let's get back to the rest of the show. Ooh, I was able to eat some of it.
Since Traore's tenure, Burkina Faso has been able to raise over 2,083 billion CFA franc and attained investor coverage rates as high as 220%. This simply means that despite the challenges faced in Burkina Faso, investors have strong confidence in the country's ability to manage its finances and fulfill its commitments. Interestingly, the funds raised are being channeled into critical investments in infrastructure and basic services. By focusing on these areas, Burkina Faso is laying the groundwork for a self-sustaining economy that can withstand an external shock. This approach is in stark contrast to the debt-dependent strategies often imposed on African countries by international financial institutions like the World Bank and IMF.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about my new hearing aids because
Perhaps this is the reason why President Traore made the decision to reject financial assistance from the IMF. You see, as of 2023, Africa's debt amounted to about $1.8 trillion. But what's interesting is the fact that as high as this figure is, it is actually lower than any world region. It would surprise you to know that Germany, a country in Europe, has a debt stock of about $2.9 trillion, which is far greater than all the debts of African countries put together.
Most of that's to America.
However, the problem is that African countries' debts are burdensome and put a lot of pressure on their economies because they are mainly owed to international rather than domestic lenders. In contrast, developed countries such as Germany, the United States, and the United Kingdom usually borrow from domestic creditors. And the difference between these two is that external lenders prefer to lend to developing countries in their own currency or international hard currencies, such as the dollar, while domestic lenders lend using the country's local currency. More than 30% of Africa's total debt is owed to so-called development organizations like the World Bank and IMF, whose loans usually come with certain conditions that African countries must fulfill.
Okay, I don't know if you guys caught that, but basically what's happening is instead of bringing in other money to run their economy, they're printing their own money, backing it by the gold from the gold mines they took, and financing their own country. It's really that simple. Watch the reports I've done. They actually own, I think, 5 gold mines. They just got $250 million from Barrick Gold and some other gold place for fines. They're rolling in dough right now, and they're getting a higher percentage of royalties on all the mines of the mining companies that still in that area, operate in that area. So they're getting all this money, and instead of these leaders spending it on themselves, they're doing the right thing. Holy shit. Wow, they're doing the right thing. They're paying off local debts. They're increasing the amount of capital they have in their own currency because just like India, they want to be their own reserve currency. So, yeah, interesting stuff, but that's what they didn't tell you.